So this is for a show called Open Chess with Girn. I'm Girn. And what I want to do, Himesh, is I want to be able to talk about the film, talk about your role in the film, and also to talk a little bit about kind of, the interesting idea behind the casting as well, because there seems to be like a lot of colorblind casting that happened in this, and it's just the most awesome thing ever. So are you comfortable with us going in that direction?
Yeah, sure.
Brilliant.
Great.
So, in your words, what is Tenet about?
It's about John David Washington's character as he traverses this mystery that he's led to, and he's just got this one word, tenet, and it unlocks, this conspiracy, and the conspiracy leads him to something that he could never have imagined, and into a story that is really thrilling.
And what's really interesting about what you said there is I looked up the word tenet because I remembered the word from school. And I was thinking, like,
Hmm.
what does that word mean? There's got to be some kind of, interesting idea behind knowing Christopher Nolan behind why he chose that. And when I looked it up, it said that it was a palindrome where the letters spell the same frontward and backwards. And now having seen the film, I get partially why that was the case with the fact that people move through, reality, moving forward and moving backwards. So what I wanted to ask you is, and that was the other thing, is that the main antagonist is called Sator. And Sator is also a word from the Sator Square. And I wanted to ask you this because it was really interesting because Sator means planter and Tenet means master. There's got to be some kind of relationship with why they were both in that film that way. And I want to get insight from it from you, because having seen the movie once, I feel like I need to see it a whole bunch of dozen times more to actually get that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I didn't actually get to talk to Chris about all these different elements,
Right.
and I think at this point he's probably keeping those cards still quite close to his chest because obviously the film's just come out.
Yes.
But I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how he kind of the architecture of the story that he's created, because I'm sure all those elements that you've mentioned are part of it. And
Absolutely.
there are other things that people will recognize if they watch the film with that in mind. It just speaks to how amazing a storyteller he is, that he tells these kind of epic blockbuster stories, but kind of threaded into the whole thing are these amazing concepts and these explorations of existence in a way that I
Right.
think are what make his movies so amazing.
Absolutely. And for anyone out there that isn't a Chris Nolan aficionado or isn't really a film goer per se, why do you feel that this particular film is something that they should definitely watch, especially if it's the first Christopher Nolan film that they've come across?
I think because they're going to see stuff that they've never seen before. There's an element to this movie which I won't spoil, but it means that you're going to see things on the cinema screen that will make your jaw hit the floor because you'll barely be able to comprehend what you're looking at. It's something that I think Chris has obviously been very famous for doing through all of his movies, from Inception, and through the Dark Knight films, obviously. But this time he's taken it to a whole other level with the way that he's almost fused all the different ideas that he's been playing with over the years and made it something so cinematically thrilling, that it's the perfect film to catch at the cinema if you can.
Absolutely, and that's what's really great right now. It almost seems, divinely timed that we're in a era right now where we're slowly going back to the cinemas. The world is starting to open up. That this kind of film, which really its truest glory is seeing it on the big screen, is seeing it in theater, which I had the pleasure of seeing on kind of one of those big IMAX screens. It's so spectacular to watch and so layered, that it really, I mean, if this film doesn't bring you back to the theater, I don't know what film's going to. The story is, you know, like very, very intricately woven. The characters are very beautifully developed, how they kind of interchange with each other. There's so many countries that it was shot in, like I believe 7 countries that it was shot in. It true, and you know, the amount of different nationalities of characters that were used and casting that was done. This truly is a global film. I mean, what are your thoughts, you know, on that?
I think the thing with Chris is that he knows how international cinema is. When we
Right.
spoke about my character before we started shooting, he was very aware of how his movies are seen by people all over the world. And I think especially he went to India, I think maybe to do scouting locations for this movie. And he said he got recognized more in India than he had anywhere else. You know, people
Right.
knew who he was, and he had kind of young people coming up to him asking him, you know, about filmmaking, and he found it really, really great. So, you know, I think he wanted to make that part of his tapestry for this story, and then also for him to cast, you know, an actress like Dimple Kapadia, who
Right.
to people like me who grew up with Bollywood, but obviously to Indian people as well. She's a
Yeah.
huge actor. It's a really clever way of making it a truly international kind of cast.
Absolutely. And the really interesting thing is that he chose to make her character almost like a secondary antagonist, you know, to the character of Kenneth. Like, you know, especially towards the ending, and I don't want to give away the plot or anything, but you kind of get to feel that, you know, she's an antagonist in the film when you get towards the end of the film, which is really wonderful. I'm curious to ask you, your character of Mahir, it seems like it was a colorblind casting, because here you are as a British South Asian, you play an American South Asian, but it's never talked about. And you know, I expected you to, you know, when they announced that we're going to India in this particular part of the plot, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to see him there, but you weren't there. We
Mm.
saw you in the most unexpected part of the, you know, film and plot, with there being absolutely no, you know, idea of casting you because of your ethnicity. I mean, was that purposeful? Can you give us some insight on that? Because I found it fascinating.
You know, I think Chris was actually a bit more specific about who he wanted to cast in that role, but he was very open to kind of ideas of where that person would be from, and you know, the direction that we could go in with that character. You know, it was a really pleasant surprise, I suppose, for me, because I was going in thinking, you know, he's a huge director, very accomplished, and he's obviously known for his stories being very precise and precisely kind of plotted and characterized. But he was really open to kind of, you know, me kind of saying, hey, what do you reckon about it being American? And he was like, yeah, great.
Right.
And that was really, really great, and it just meant that it just added another texture, I suppose, in terms of the characters and story.
Absolutely. And where your character's concerned, what was it about this role that you felt, okay, this is for me?
Well, see, the way things panned out, it meant that I wasn't until I got the role, I didn't know what the role was, because when I auditioned for it, I didn't read anything from the film. I read some sides from something else entirely. So it was only when I'd been offered the part and I read the script that I was like, okay, this is who this person is, and you know, obviously at that point I wasn't going to be like, nah, actually, you know what, I'm good. I'll see you later. Like that was never an option, but it was nice to kind of, as I say, have that kind of dialogue with a filmmaker like Chris. I think what I found so amazing about working with him was, you know, obviously he has a very clear vision. He knows what he wants, but what he does is surrounds himself with great people and other creatives, and he knows how important that is. And so he knows he's not doing it alone. You know, he knows he needs the best stunt team. He works with a lot of the best actors and the best technicians to make his movies, and that's what makes his movies as special as they are.
Absolutely. So going back to your role, Imesh, can you tell me what specifically, um, in your kind of idea of how you fit into the plot, was the importance of your role? I mean, I know that you don't want to give away too much of it, but I mean, everything that Christopher does is on purpose. You're on purpose. So I kind of want to see what you can, tell us that you're comfortable telling everybody in regards to this.
I think it's when it comes to a story like this, and a character like John David's character going on a mission like this, he needs people who've got different expertise. And
Right.
my character has a kind of clear expertise in doing certain things, and that's why he gets to do certain things that people may have seen in the trailer. And so that's kind of his background. And we spoke a little bit about who he is and where he might have come from.
Right.
And that's kind of, in a way, good for me to have in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, who knows how much of that you get to see on screen, I suppose. But we try and layer it in.
No, you get to see enough of it to get kind of a real sense of why he is integral to certain components, especially when you get to kind of the climax of the film. I wanted to ask you, in today's, society with everything that's going on right now, this film couldn't have come out at a better time with it having kind of that global feel with all the different types of ethnicities involved, whereas we don't really talk about the ethnicities. They just happen to be characters in this by default of the importance of what's happening in the story, right?
Hmm.
It's shot all, in different parts of the world as well. It's releasing as probably one of the first movies that is releasing as cinemas are starting to open. It almost seems very well positioned for the times that we live in today. Do you have a comment on that?
You know what? I think it's one of those kind of. On one hand, I think whether it, obviously everything we've gone through this year has been really hard. But had that not happened, I think it still would have been something that stood out
Right.
at this level of filmmaking. Chris's movies stand out anyway because he has a very unique style of filmmaking at this level. But I think it would have stood out for the very reasons that you're talking about. And now, of course, it's kind of unwittingly flying the flag for getting people back into cinemas as and when they feel safe to do so.
Right.
But I am really glad that it's a movie like this. It's a movie from a filmmaker who loves cinema and pushes cinema to its to its limits in terms of how it can be and how powerful it can be. And also, yeah, we've got a black lead in a big epic blockbuster, and that's a really powerful thing, I think, at the moment as well. So I'm really proud to be part of the film, and I'm hoping that it does really, really well.
Absolutely. And I can't see why it wouldn't, because it has everything that you'd expect from an entertainment perspective, from a probing perspective, because that's who I am. I love to kind of critique and look at what is actually going on. What are these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that are coming together to make this happen? And I feel this film is quite unique on many levels, because it's not just pulling from, okay, here's a good story or here's great action scenes. It's pulling also from multiple global ethnicities, very rich characterization. The story just, it's it's so vested emotionally that I feel like I need to see it a few times. So everyone out there, I do encourage people to go out and see this movie more than one times. And the great thing is about people like you, Himesh, is that we're living in a time now which is different from my times. I mean, I'm 50 years old, so I come from the times of the 80s and 90s. I know people do that with me all the time. From the 80s and 90s, where you'd never see ethnicity in big blockbuster films. And here you are, you're one of the testaments of the varied films that you've actually, and work in theater and all the other different, ways that you've been involved in the whole acting realm. You have such a diverse pool and body of work. What do you feel that's a testament to, other than obviously your talent? Anyone that's seen your work can see that, and your authenticity, and the fact that you've put in your dues and your time and all the rest of it. But the opportunity needs to be there, right? It hasn't always been there. So like in your experience, what do you feel it is outside of everything you bring to the table in the world that we live in today?
I think it's that people are starting to realize that they have to diversify in terms of where they're looking for their talent. That the talent pool is maybe wider than they'd previously imagined.
Right.
And that sometimes if you just widen your pool a little bit and look in places, and if you look at people who you previously may not have considered for XYZ role, then you might be pleasantly surprised, and then you pick the right person for the role, and that person just happens to be black, that person just happens to be brown, or
Right.
of any other minority, and then you've kind of done something huge, in a way, simply by casting the right person for the role. For example, when we did Yesterday, I know that the pool that Danny was auditioning from was everyone.
Right.
I just happened to be the right guy for the role as far as he was concerned. But obviously, he didn't mean to do that. But what that meant then was that brown people around the world were going, "Oh my God, finally there's a brown guy playing a rock star in the movie."
Right.
That was just because they just widened the talent pool. They just kind of went, "Where else can we look here
Yeah.
for the right person?" And I think the more that people do that, the more kind of naturally we'll start to fall into certain roles that we're just right for.
Right.
Um, and on the other hand, there needs to be more encouragement and validation of stories that require kind of specific casting. That's
Absolutely.
the other side of it, where that needs to happen. Um, but I do feel really lucky with the way that my career is going at the moment. But I'm just hoping I can use this platform to kind of elevate those stories and those kind of visions that I want to kind of share with the world.
Absolutely. And, your varied work so far is a testament to that. And I want to close off actually, Himesh, just to ask you one question, which I'm dying to know your answer for. And that is, for those people out there whose parents have always told them that they've got to go out there and they've got to do the corporate job, they've got to become, your doctor, accountant, lawyer, etc., especially in our culture. I mean, you didn't do this, right? Looking back over your, that narrative, which I'm sure at some point was there for you, as it is for anyone from strong ethnic backgrounds, especially the South Asian community. Knowing what you've seen happen with your career, what would you say to anyone out there aspiring to get into the entertainment business?
I guess I was very lucky in the sense that my parents were actually always encouraging of me, so I was very, very lucky to have that. At the same time, I'd hope that myself and a lot of other South Asian actors who are doing pretty well at the moment, I hope that we can be examples of when it can work. Where if you put in the hard work and you work on your craft, I think that's the main thing for me. Is really, I never, when I was growing up being an actor, even though I got a job on TV at a young age,
Yeah.
for me it was never about the celebrity. That's kind of a byproduct of what you do.
Right.
It's about the work of being an actor. It's about the craft of being an actor. It's about making sure that that's your number one. That's what you work on, because
Right.
that's what will carry you forward. And that's why then you might get to stages where people know your name or whatever because you're in XYZ film, that sort of thing. But
Absolutely.
the number one thing always has to be working on the craft of being an actor, and that's got to be the passion, really. And in terms of how that measures in terms of success, I suppose measuring success is a very difficult thing to do.
It's a relative.
Yeah, but I
Mm-hmm.
think this career choice is as valid as any career choice, and I know that's not as easy always to explain to everyone, from whatever culture, to be honest. But I know that is prevalent within the South Asian community. But I hope less and less so, because as I said, there's more of us there. There's more of
Right.
us who kind of fought for our place at the table, and so the more of us that we are going to be seen, the more of the kids who are watching and I can be that, and the
Right.
talent pool will widen, and hopefully we'll keep moving upwards.
Absolutely. And we truly will represent the world the way it is, right?
Hope so, yeah.
Absolutely. You were such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, Himesh. I really
Thank you.
appreciate
Thanks.
it. And good
Thanks
luck
very
with the
much.
film. It was fab. I
Oh, thank you.
loved it.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Speak to you again.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
bye.